So, it really is incredible to think about the fact that the future God's moving you to has the power to break old things off of you. That's what I want to talk to you about for just a minute today. The importance of forward movement in our lives. Action produces action. Movement births movement. We've been talking about the children of Israel, the sons of Israel, that sonship dynamic that they carried, they walked in, but they weren't fully actualizing it because they weren't really aware of it. Part of Moses' leadership function to them was to try to teach them not just the idea of it, but how to move in it. We see this with David when David goes out to fight Goliath and King Saul attempts to put his armor on him. The armor is an ill fit for David because David doesn't belong in that limitation. David has an understanding of his sonship and his covenant in that would provide him success as he went in what fit him. And so the scriptures give us a lot of truth from Genesis to Revelation as God begins to invite people into covenant. Beginning with Abraham, we see God conveying the idea of sonship. So when we understand what sonship is, like I said Sunday, it breaks old mindsets, old models. You see, a mindset determines my movement. If I think like a slave, I'm going to act like a slave. If I think like a son, I'm going to act like a son. Sonship is essential. So David understands this. Moses understands this because of the way God had been talking to him, the language God had been using with him. And so he's trying to convey this to them. And because we talked about it Sunday in Exodus 14, when they get to the Red Sea and the Bible said they're boxed in. Two specific dimensions that are important there. God said, Pharaoh's going to think you're wandering in a land of confusion. You're wandering around in a state of confusion, but I need you to understand that you've been authorized to move forward successfully. So having a sonship mindset says that even when I'm in those state of being or a season where it seems like I'm kind of wandering aimlessly, and maybe there's some confusion, I'm not quite sure the way to move forward. I'm not quite sure what to do. I'm not quite sure how things are going to turn out. There's an uncertainty in what you're processing or dealing with that's producing a confusion. And if you're not careful, you will misinterpret the state you're in as wandering aimlessly in a place of confusion and being boxed in. Boxed in meaning no options. You're completely surrounded, that you don't have a way forward. And that all speaks to having kind of a slave mentality in the sense that you're a slave or a victim to the limitations that your situation may be showing you. But having a sonship mentality says, I understand that as I focus forward, I'm authorized to succeed. God is with me. And in fact, he's orchestrated the entire dimension of every dynamic I'm dealing with. And my assignment is to think and act like a son, not like a slave. Because when I do that, I'll make son decisions, not slave decisions. Sons take action because they understand they've been authorized and empowered to do so. Empowerment means you have power from the inside out, and that starts with an understanding of sonship. So everything God tells Moses to do is directly connected to Israel's sonship as covenant sons and daughters. So how this applies to you and me is if you are in faith in Jesus, you've been born again, but not just born again, you've been adopted into the family of God, and you are now a son or daughter of covenant. A son or daughter of covenant, and God will never provoke you to move in a direction, even if it seems ridiculous, even if it seems unorthodox, even if it seems impossible. Listen, God specializes in that. I mentioned Sunday, he reveals and provokes us to move in unorthodox strategies. You see, the normal strategies, the normal ways of thinking, the ways we've always done things aren't going to change things. God wants to free us from being limited in our thinking, because if we're limited in our thinking, we'll be limited in our perception, and that will ultimately limit our behavior. So as we think about this, we think about the power of moving forward. That's why I started the conversation with that statement. It's incredible to think that moving forward has the power naturally, mentally, in terms of how you think, your thought life, and where you're jammed up in your thinking, breaking old negative thought patterns, but also releasing supernatural resources. Being in covenant with God means that there is a supernatural resource dimension to your life. And so when Moses says stand still, we talked about this Sunday, but when Moses says stand still, God says, no, don't stand still, move forward. He's saying and he reveals it to Moses as the sons of Israel move forward. Or watch this, as they move forward, behaving like sons of covenant and not like slaves to old thinking, old behavior, old enemies, old outcomes, old patterns, old processes, old experiences, old emotions, old moods, old mentalities. As they move forward in the power of covenant sonship, there are things that are going to open up to them. There are successes in their steps. I'm telling you today that the more intensely, in fact, let me just talk about this. The more intensely you are battled, or the more intimidated you are tempted to feel about moving forward, that intensity in and of itself is an indication of how significant your steps are. And so you've got to shift from thinking in an old way to thinking in a new way. Thinking like a son or daughter of covenant. And part of that thinking is that your steps have already been authorized to succeed at whatever it is God is provoking you to pursue. Now we know for them there's an army behind them. There's an ocean or the Red Sea in front of them. What are they going to do? I don't know what you're surrounded by today. I don't know what season you're in. I don't know what's chasing you. Whether it's a circumstance or something in your thought life, something in your inner man or inner world that's chasing you. But here's what I need you to know. What you are chasing has far more authority to determine your outcome than what's chasing you. I'm going to say that again. What you're chasing has far more authority to determine your outcome than the things that are chasing you. So it's not about what's chasing you, it's about what you're chasing. It's not about where you were, it's about where you're headed. It's not even really about where you are. We get so consumed with where we are because we're inundated with responsibilities, stress, challenges, information. Information is the enemy of movement. I'm going to say that again. Information is the enemy of movement, specifically when God is provoking us to chase something. So I want to step back and ask you a question right now, and I want you to seriously just contemplate this. What should you be chasing right now at this time in your life? What should you be chasing? Notice I didn't ask you what's chasing you. What's harassing you? What's bothering you? Not that those issues aren't important, but what I'm telling you is that when you will shift your focus to thinking and behaving like a son of covenant, a daughter of covenant, that you are in covenant relationship with the God who's got your back. Literally, he's got your back. I talked Sunday about the gap. What's chasing you can't catch you. So there's far more authority on what God's called you to chase, what you should be chasing. And when you do that, do it from the perspective that, number one, what's chasing me can't catch me. So I don't have to focus on those things. I don't have to feed them. Second, I can move forward confidently, knowing that God has scheduled success in my steps. The psalmist put it this way: the steps, the actions, the things that a good man or woman does are ordered, they're ordained, appointed, set up, they've been scheduled, is the understanding of that culture of the word that is used there. That God's already scheduled success, and your success is tied to your steps or your actions. What are you doing about what you need to be chasing? That's why I asked you the question, what do you need to be chasing? Not what's chasing you. What do you need to be chasing? What do you need to be pursuing? Why do you need to take time to contemplate that question? Because once you answer it, then you can begin to take action. God says, I'm going to move with you. I'll do my part, but you do your part. I'll impact, this is what God's saying to Moses, I will impact the environment. I'll impact the atmosphere. I will handle what I can handle supernaturally as you step forward physically. Tell them to move forward. That's a physical action step that has a supernatural anointing on it. Listen, there are things God is calling you to go after in the face of impossibility, in the face of your history, in the face of whatever limitations that historically may have been there. I mentioned it Sunday, but I'm going to say it again because you need to hear it. God is breaking the jurisdiction of an old season off of you, but that deliverance, that outcome is directly tied to your actions, decisions. Because when you move forward as a son or daughter of covenant, there are supernatural resources that are released. The best time to move forward is in the face of impossibility. The best time to expect that God is working with you, He is working with you as you move forward, is right now. So let's take it back to the question I asked. What do you need to be chasing or pursuing? The follow-up question to that is, what's holding you back? What do you need to be chasing? What's holding you back? Third and final question, what do you need to do to stop letting that hold you back? What do you need to be chasing? What's holding you back? What do you need to do to stop letting it hold you back? Moses says to them, move forward. God says to him, while they move forward, you stretch your hand and I'll do my job. There are three dimensions. Everybody's got a responsibility and a job to do. Do the job God's calling you to do, that faith is provoking you to do. And ignore, neglect, don't pay attention to the things that are chasing you, whether they're external circumstances or internal thoughts, fears, doubts, uncertainties, emotions. Don't pay attention to those things. Everything you need to succeed is in the word of the Lord over your life. Every resource, every outcome, every connection, every opportunity. God's got good things ahead of you, and you can't step into them until you begin to move forward. So let me finalize with those three questions I asked a minute ago because they're going to be game changers for you. What do you need to be chasing right now? What is holding you back? Finally, what do you need to do about the things that are holding you back so that you can chase what you need to be chasing? There is success, supernatural success in your steps. Those things God's calling you to do, your success has already been appointed and scheduled. You can't miss it. God's provoking you right now because now's the time in His timing, not the timing of the circumstances or the things that are chasing you. When you adopt the mindset that you've been adopted as a son or daughter of covenant, it's a game changer because it gives you the confidence to know the things that are chasing you or that seem to be chasing you can't catch you, and you've been fully authorized to move forward, knowing that God's going to move what needs to be moved as you move. Chase what you need to chase and watch God show up in ways you weren't even expecting, exceeding your expectations as He partners with your faith, because faith moves. So get moving.